there are always so many nice people there. They always give you hope and encouragement. That's why even today, I still have the hope. There's always good things waiting for us.
In this episode, Edith and her guests speak about the immigration experience. For many immigrants, negative experiences occur when competing for jobs alongside equally qualified Americans. However, this conversation is quite different. It brings a refreshing, positive look at American culture.
Hi folks, I'm your host Edith Richards, and you may know me from my podcast series, Myers-Briggs Question Corner, or my website at topcareer.com. I've spent the last 20 years of my career helping people get smart about their careers. And I've found that lots of smart people aren't successful. Why is that? I'm convinced it's due to emotional intelligence. In EQ at Work, I'm bringing you inspiring people and messages to help you get smart about your emotions. Many immigrants are drawn to the United States with promises of prosperity. For hundreds of years, the U.S. has been known as the land of opportunity, and we see this clearly in our multicultural makeup. The contributions of immigrants have shaped our country as we know it, and yet we Americans remain deeply polarized on the issue of immigration. Today's topic is not political. It's the very human story of acculturation and everything that goes along with that. Immigrants experience unique stresses, prejudice, and often poverty. As such, immigrants develop coping styles to adjust to their new culture, but of course that comes with stress. Sometimes that stress is positive. For example, the person may enjoy being in a new culture and may look forward to learning and adapting. Other times, it can be negative, especially when everything becomes overwhelming. For adult immigrants, this often happens when applying for jobs, competing alongside equally qualified Americans. I hope that you will recognize in this story that we are, in fact, all in this together, this thing called life. And I hope that together we share the same basic humanity. And with that, I would like to introduce my guest today, Fei Zao. Fei, welcome to EQ at Work.
Hi, thank you, Edith.
Fei is a research scientist and research engineer with a PhD in chemistry, material science, and mechanical engineering. And he came to the US 9 years ago from China and is working with semiconductors. Fei, did I get all that right?
Oh, yes.
Okay, great. So there's a story behind every decision to immigrate. Can you share your story with us?
Oh, sure. Yeah, actually, exactly. It's a long story behind that. And also, I have to say, it's a very hard decision to make. I had a long discussion with my wife and the family before we finally made that decision. It's about more than 1 year. But eventually, we decided to stay. I think just because for the purpose of my kids' education.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but for myself and my wife, we have to quit our jobs and start everything from the very beginning in a new country.
Yeah, that's got to be tough, even to just make that decision, even though you know it's in the best interest of your child.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was the main reason for you to immigrate, was to have a better life for your child. Is that right?
Oh, yes.
But then in doing so, and I've heard this from other immigrants, it's almost like going backwards.
Oh, yes.
What were your first impressions of the U.S. and what surprised you?
Actually, the first impression is totally different from what I expected. Before I came to the US, I saw a lot of things from the Hollywood movies. There's tall buildings there, very crowded people there. But when I first came here, I didn't see the tall buildings. I didn't see the busy traffic. Everything is very quiet. So it's totally different from what I expected.
That's pretty funny. So you must have come in a more rural area or more space, I guess, when you were first in the US.
Oh, yes. Actually, yeah, I landed at the Dallas International Airport, so it's a little bit different.
Yeah, right. And then when you're trying to transition to American life, I imagine that was really difficult for you in the beginning. Can you share what or who helped you as you were acclimating to American culture?
Yeah, actually, it's really very hard at the beginning. I think the first and the most hard part is the language. I didn't understand what they were saying, especially I couldn't order in a restaurant. Yeah, it's very hard for me to talk on the phone because I don't understand that, especially if I want to make an appointment to see a doctor. It's very hard for me because I don't understand their question at all. In the US, we have to have a car, right? If you want to go anywhere, either for grocery shopping or something. So that means I need to get a driver license first because at that time, my language was not good. I couldn't understand what the instructor was saying. So I failed my driving test several times. So it was very hard.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, a very specific question, just like they asked me, what's your DOB? I didn't know what that means. The lady was very nice. Then she told me DOB is date of birth. She repeated it twice and I finally got it. So yeah, at first it's very frustrated.
Yeah.
But I had to say I've overcome all those kind of difficulties because there are so many wonderful, great people there to help along the way from the very beginning and even now.
Wow. I'm just thinking here when you're telling that DOB, the date of birth story, it's just making me think how much we take for granted, living in our own culture. And, because we hear that all the time. What's your DOB? And, you're coming at it from a completely different angle. And of course, yeah, there's this acronym and so many others that are going to leave you completely lost.
Yeah, exactly. So to improve my English, I think there are a lot of programs provided by both the county and also some non-profit organizations. I did get a lot of help from them. I think first is like the ESL classes from the county. Yeah, they have different levels. So they helped me a lot from the beginning to start improve my English. But I think there was a turning point in my life ever since I attended a ESL classes in a local church.
So you started attending ESL, English as a Second Language class, through the county.
Yes.
And then you started attending ESL classes at the church.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Ever since I attended the ESL classes at the church, I think first I could continue to have my English improved. But what's more important is I have also get the opportunities to learn more about the US customs, especially they have different activities to introduce like the Thanksgiving, the Christmas, the Easter, all kind of things. And also we were invited to their home to have lunch with them. Yeah, so that's helped a lot.
Yeah, because then you can actually relate to other Americans in a more natural way.
Yes, I think from that time, yeah, I started to feel a part of society.
That's excellent.
Yeah, and what's more important is I think in the ESL program as the church, we had a one-to-one conversation partner. Mm-hmm. So during the summer break, that was wonderful. Because my partner helped me learn how to order meal in a restaurant. Yeah, that's a difficult part for me before. And also helped me to create a LinkedIn account because I told him I need to look for a job.
The LinkedIn account.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's very important, isn't it?
Yes, that's why I said it's a great turning point for myself.
Yeah. So this actually brings me to another question. When you were in China, I'm sure you learned English in China, but you still had trouble here with the language.
Oh, yes. Before I came here, I did have a lot of training on writing and reading. So I didn't have an issue on that reading, but I didn't get much training or opportunities on the speaking or listening.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you working when you first came to the US?
Oh, yes. I came here because I was a postdoctor at that time.
I see. Okay, so you got a postdoctorate and that's why you were able to come.
Oh, yes.
But you didn't realize, I guess, getting to the job search part of the LinkedIn and how important that is.
Yeah, at that time, I didn't realize. But now I know it's very important.
Yes. So switching gears just a little bit here, and I think we're going to get back shortly into the whole job search part of your story. But before we get to that, were there times that you felt unwelcome as an immigrant? And if so, can you talk about that?
Actually, to me, I didn't have the specific experience of feeling unwelcome as an immigrant. I think maybe partly because I had very limited social activities. But I think most of the time, people I have met or worked with or interacted with, they are very nice. Actually, they give me a lot of hope and encouragement.
That's really good to hear.
Yeah, actually, I was unemployed for about half a year during that time. So at that time, I worked as a delivery driver.
Delivery driver.
Yeah, delivery driver. And also at that time, it's not that good. Actually, the hourly pay is not that high, so we have to rely on the tip.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and sometimes, let's say if we get the order late or I have to drive for like a long time to deliver the order, so some of the customers may not be that happy. So some of them may not give you any tip at all.
Right.
Yeah, and you can imagine after you're driving in the darkness for maybe let's say 20 or 30 minutes, and then you got nothing. So that was a very frustrating situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often, but it happens. But yeah, I think the most important part is whenever you have this kind of situation, frustration, you can always meet wonderful people. They're very generous. They give you a good tip. That make you feel a great day again. There are always so many nice people there. They always give you hope and encouragement. That's why even today, I still have the hope. There's always good things waiting for us.
It's a very good reminder, I think, for everybody tuning in here is that life may throw you a lot of difficulties, but there are always people there who want to help, and there are ways to get through these difficult situations.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, thank you for reminding us about that. What advice do you have for others who are thinking about immigrating to the U.S.?
I think there are several things. The first, you need to prepare for some potential challenges before you come here. First thing, I think the language. Yeah, if you can get more opportunities to improve your speaking and listening, so that would be great for you to overcome the difficulties in the first step. Also, if you can have some other kind of skill set, so that may help you look for some jobs at the beginning. It'll be easier for that.
Okay, so you mean if they have a specific skill set for job searching. So yeah, if you're highly qualified in your particular area of expertise, that's going to be helpful when you come here to find a job.
Yes, but as long as we have a dream, so hold fast to it. Even if you don't have any preparation, just like me, don't worry about that. There are always either wonderful people or great programs there to help you out.
And this is a good reminder too, no matter where you are in the United States, there are programs to help immigrants to adapt. So different acculturation programs, different language programs, and then workforce development programs too, to help people get jobs. And what I think is particularly interesting about your story, Fei, is that you were able to find these resources through the religious organizations, through churches, not just government or county agencies.
Actually, I have to say I'm from both, but I think the door was opened from the church ESL classes to me. Yeah, maybe it's a very specific example. This is also another chance. for new immigrants to learn. It might be helpful.
Yeah, excellent. Is there anything else that you wish, other than language, that you had known before you came to the US?
I think the first thing is still it would be better if you can learn some of the US customs or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What was very different for you in terms of US customs as compared to Chinese?
I think, honestly, there are some things we didn't expect because when I first came here, you see there are so many strangers. They're so very nice and they are willing to help you. At first, you may not understand why.
Oh.
Yeah, so at first, it confused me. Why they're so happy to help you without asking for anything. Back to that time, I didn't understand. Even though I didn't understand, but because of the repeated helps, actually they helped me increase or overcome the difficulties or frustration at the very beginning. And also that helped me make the decision to stay.
I see. Just because of the people you encountered and how helpful they were to you.
Oh, yes. And also because I have received so much help, so much love, so much encouragement. And that's also why today I want to stay here to help spread this kind of encouragement to others.
That's really great to hear. As I mentioned before, the polarization on the issue of immigration among Americans, it's rampant these days. And as you know, there's a lot of divisiveness about immigrants, just especially recently in recent years. What do you wish more Americans knew about immigrants?
I think first, based on my personal experiences, I don't think most Americans knows about the immigration process. Yeah, because if they don't have any friends or relatives need to go through that process. So I wish more Americans could understand that process, because if we want to immigrate, sometimes it may not depend on how hard we work, because it's not a simple matter of if you work hard or not. It may take a long time, even if you want to get a work permit first that allow you to be able to work in the US.
It takes a long time, and it's not always just a matter of hard work. Would you say it's often a matter of luck?
I think maybe something like that, but it's also depends on the persistence, because sometimes you say if you're waiting for a long time, especially the situation would be very frustrating. So it would be hard for immigrants, especially you have a family to support. You have to earn money, but you're not allowed to work. So you can imagine this kind of hard situation.
Yeah, that's something definitely I wish more Americans would pay attention to that too, because it's a long and arduous process just to get the work permit. And then once you're here, it's not like it's a walk in the park. You have a lot of difficulties to overcome.
Oh, yes. A lot of Americans, they are very curious about China, but maybe some of the information they got was not that updated. Because from the description at my kid age, my feeling was that they were describing a China that I was not familiar with. It was before I was born. I think maybe there should be more communication. Yeah, it would be better. Yes.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because you mentioned how, you got a lot of your information about the U.S. from the media and from movies.
Yes.
And that's how we get our information from China too, right? There's definitely going to be a lot of misperceptions there.
And also, I think for any immigrants, I think they may have known more about US than Americans knows about the country where the immigrants was from.
Right. So the immigrants here, they're going to know more about the U.S. So you're going to know more about the U.S. than most Americans know about China.
Yes.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. So I know that you've had some challenges regarding finding and sustaining employment as an immigrant. Can you tell us about that?
Oh, yes. Actually, we are the first generation immigrants. So, that means we have no relatives here. We have no friends here. So it would be very hard for us to get the recommendation when we look for a job. We cannot get that kind of the supportive recommendation or those positive recommendations. So the first step to get a job in the US will be very, very difficult for us, especially for technical guys.
Right. So yeah, when you don't know anyone and there's no one to vouch for you, yeah, that can be really tough. And most jobs still, they're asking for either a recommendation or a letter of reference or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it'd be even more difficult if your language not that well. Maybe you are unable to answer those questions in a proper way because you never touched those kind of questions before.
So when you're talking about the kinds of questions there, do you mean in an interview situation?
Yes.
And are you talking about like the non-technical questions that we often ask in interviews?
Yes, I think most of the questions, maybe we don't know how to answer are those non-technical ones.
So can you give us some examples of that? Some questions that kind of threw you off in an interview?
In one interview, I was asked, what would you do if you met a very tough customer? So because I never had that kind of experience before, so it's very hard for me to answer that question.
Okay. Oh, so some of these hypothetical questions.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess in China, they don't have, you don't do that.
Yeah, I didn't. Yeah. Actually, I don't think I gave a proper answer.
Interviews are just, they're so difficult for everyone because at the end of the day, it really is subjective. But when you get into more technical fields, I think like, for example, your field, it's a little bit of a different story. They're going to be relying more on your technical skills than these hypothetical questions. Would you say that's true?
Oh, yes, agree. Yeah, I totally agree. Before I got my first job, I submitted more than 100 resumes, but I didn't get many chances for an interview. My first job, actually, I just submitted my resume in Indeed. So it's a very simple process. Mm-hmm. But during the interview, I was asked many technical questions. I'm good at answering those kind of questions.
I see. Okay. So you were able to get your first job just randomly through Indeed by answering technical questions. So that's good.
Yes.
And how about your current job?
My current job, actually, I was contacted by recruiters.
Okay, that's interesting. So how did they contact you? Do you have your, I guess, through LinkedIn or?
Honestly, I don't know where they got the information from, either LinkedIn or Indeed or Monster, because I posted my resumes there. So I'm not sure which one. I didn't ask them. One thing I know is the information they got was not updated. So that's why after they called me, I had to send them an updated resume.
I see. Okay. So they sought you out. So that's also, I think, very helpful for listeners to know. Just posting your resume on these job sites, it can help to get you some exposure.
Oh, yes. Agree. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So is there anything else that you can share? Any helpful tips for other immigrant job seekers?
I think there are different levels of job seeking. I think firstly, maybe you can get some help from some local workforce centers, because there they can help you modify your resumes and they can give you some training. And also they may have some position there. But for the professionals, I think it's better to have your resume posted like in LinkedIn or the Monster or Indeed I mentioned. And also it's better to work with recruiters because they are very professional and they can give you very good advice. And also they can give you feedback, even if you feel maybe it's for your next interview.
That's really good advice to hear. Yeah, working with recruiters, and there's so many recruiters out there, internal recruiters and external recruiters, like the ones it sounds like you worked with, people who just find your information online. But the feedback that you get from recruiters also very important, because a lot of folks tuning in may not be aware of applicant tracking systems and how applicant tracking systems work and aggregate your data. And so for any job that you're applying to, the information really does need to be tailored for that specific job. And recruiters can often help with that process. So that's important to know. I think it's also important to know that in today's world, it's not the most qualified person who necessarily gets the job, but it is the most visible person. So it sounds like with Fei, you were very visible. Your resume was easily found. And for that reason, you were able to secure this position you have now.
Yes, I think so.
So if there are really two takeaways that I have from this conversation, first is for new immigrants just to seek out services, local services at local workforce centers, or even if there's a local church or a religious organization that provides this type of support. That's one of the first things immigrants should do. And secondly, just know that whatever negative experiences you have, if you have any, there are always good people out there who are willing to help. So those are my two takeaways from this conversation. Was there anything else that you wanted to add, Fei?
I think that's the second takeaway. I think that's most important. Yeah, because it's not only related to job searching, but also about your attitude to life and work.
Excellent point. Thank you very much and very well said. Fei, it has been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your story with us.
No problem. Thank you.
Considering the difficulties many outsiders have in adjusting to life in the U.S., especially now in the midst of the coronavirus, I had been expecting Fei to share at least one story of racism or discrimination. I was surprised, to say the least, that he had no negative stories like that. I was so surprised that I even asked him more than once about negative experiences. And every time, instead of dwelling on the negativity, he turned the situation into something positive, like learning a new experience or meeting someone who helped him. At one point, Fei said that even though before coming to the U.S., he should have sought out more opportunities to practice listening and speaking in everyday English, on the other hand, if he had come with a better command of the language, he probably would not have sought out community resources, and as a result, would not have met so many influential and helpful people. And it is a direct result of his relationship with those people that gave him the professional opportunities that he has enjoyed. The most meaningful part of my conversation with Fei was how he never forgot to mention the people who helped him. Whether it was a smile and a hello while he and his family were walking in the neighborhood, to someone patiently repeating information over the phone, to providing a recommendation for a job, it is clear that his interpersonal skills are what helped Fei to both adjust and to get ahead. The emotional intelligence element of interpersonal relationships is an important one as it directly relates to our overall happiness and well-being. Interpersonal relationships is our ability and tendency to approach relationships with others as mutually beneficial and building relationships with compassion and trust. People who are skilled in this area seek out the expertise and help of others, and in turn, others seek them out because of their approachable nature. They also tend to have good teamwork skills and good cross-functional communication skills. We heard several examples of this from Fei. Every time he encountered a negative situation, he mentioned that there was someone there to help him. Humans are, by nature, social beings, and relationships are crucial to our success. People who are not as skilled in this area may see relationships with others as transactional. They may have several acquaintances, but few close personal friends. They may prefer to work alone and rely on their own skills instead of enlisting the expertise of others. If this sounds like you, in your next interaction, observe the person you're speaking with and try to gauge their level of comfort. If it's appropriate, slowly switch from impersonal to personal. Start with something relatively safe, like what the person did over the weekend. and use open-ended questions. For example, instead of, "Did you have a nice weekend?" ask, "How did you spend that 3-day weekend?" Or even more specific, "I remember you said you went to New York City recently. Did you visit any fun places that you'd recommend?" Talking with people, sharing stories, and hearing their viewpoints will go a long way in building a relationship. You'll also want to find people you genuinely like and connect with, so give people the benefit of the doubt. And remember that every person you meet knows something that you don't know. Show you're engaged with the conversation. Maintain eye contact and smile as much as possible. Show open body language. These subtle cues will show that you're open to communicating and working with others. And let's face it, we all need to get work done through others. Finally, one more point I'd like to mention is to keep up with old friends and acquaintances. You never know when you might need a recommendation for a job or even just a listening ear. Well-developed relationships serve as a buffer from the negativity of life's demands. But you don't have to have a huge group of friends to get on with people. This ability is about being able to build and sustain relationships when it's needed. Give it a try yourself and put EQ to work.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of EQ at Work. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a rating on iTunes, give us a share, and be sure to subscribe on your favourite podcast platform. We're looking to spread the word on how important emotional intelligence really is, and it would be great to have your help to do so. Next week's episode is on unintentional leadership, and our guest is Cindy Missaros, Director of Alberta, Canada's Workforce Essential Skills Society. If you've ever found yourself in a leadership role but never intended to be, you'll want to be sure to tune in. Thanks for supporting EQ at Work. Until next time.